it was. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross it with a song. Let us span another canyon, let us right another wrong. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Welcome to Bridges Programming.
And you sound very far away, like
you are listening
the man behind the curtain.
You are listening to the man behind the curtain. And I'll give you a shot of who the people are you're talking with here. This is Bridges Programming, brought to you by the HREM.org. Bridges Programming.
And what's the HREM?
Human Renewable Energy Measure. Right next to me is Susan Comont.
Hello.
And she's got a shirt on that says, "Bring back Pluto." I don't know what that means, I guess.
Well, they've taken Pluto out of the possible
mix,
planets.
Yeah.
I still think it's a planet.
So we think it's close enough. And then we are talking about, this is about the Human Renewable Energy Measure. Where's brought to you, we are promoting the HREM in a houseboat on the Mohawk River. And what you're looking at. If
you don't believe that, you have to show the other camera.
And I'm going to show you.
And all this is being brought to you by solar energy.
Solar energy. And this is the back of the stern, they call it, of the boat,
so we're
facing out the east end, facing the east on the Mohawk River between two islands.
And well, actually, it's a mainland and an island.
The mainland and an island, right? And
as far as we know.
Then this is
we're at anchor. Yes. We're hanging on a hook.
They call it a hook.
Right. When you're hanging on a hook.
And anyway, we're going to be talking to you about the Human Renewable Energy Measure on Bridges Programming. It's Friday evening. If you can go to Google Hangouts, we can see who's on the line by just looking at the bottom of the thing, and we have looks like we have one viewer. So this is a live viewer. So hello, live
Gary.
viewer. And I did ask someone to call in and look at this tonight.
We don't know who the viewer
and
is.
It could be Glenn or Gary. Anyway, we are here, and we wanted to. Oh, it's all right. I don't need to be neat enough. I just need to make sure you guys realize that we're talking about mathematics today, or numbers, and it's amazing how many times we watch things and numerology. But numerology is sort of a belief system. But science doesn't lie about numbers. Science just doesn't lie about a number. I'm going to turn this.
Yeah, it's awful bright.
Okay, this is.
We're getting lots of light through the window here.
And
do you want me to read the summary?
Yeah, you can. You read the summary, and then
particular.
But I want to give you the housekeeping. This is Bridges Programming Friday live, and we're doing video on the boat through solar energy. And
we have how many solar panels?
We
on
have
the roof
4 solar panels that are running.
They run all the electricity and
110 volts and everything.
But we run a little tiny microwave.
And anyway, we
charge the phones,
and we do everything with this. And then if a motorboat comes by or something, water, yeah. But anyway, Susan's going to read the summary of what we're trying to get out today, and we will see what happens with this. So
I expect you to listen carefully because you haven't heard the summary.
I know this is
so you're going to have to spontaneously react to what I wrote today.
And anybody can get on Google Hangouts, and there's a way to connect with us. I don't know how that is, but
we'll figure it out in future programs.
Or you can try calling us on Google Hangouts, and we'll try to get you out there. And again, I'm just going to give you a quick view of what's on the stern or the east side of the boat, so you get an idea about it.
And I'm looking out a window over here, but we only have one camera.
I only have 2 cameras.
One camera looking out.
One in the stern looking out right now. You're looking out over the Mole River. And again,
there's a boat. You can see in the distance. There's a boat. You can see it in the
camera.
He's coming toward us.
He may.
But he's not. I don't think he's going to come down
but
here.
He's coming. Yeah,
he's on the other side of the island.
He's following the deep water.
Right.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about. And this is all brought to you because of great technology, and we couldn't have done this 10 years ago. We couldn't have done it for sure 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. Or you might have been able to do it. Got a lot of money, but since you don't have a lot of money nowadays, we're doing this with pretty much technology that is basically shared as a collectivist, not an individual, as a collectivist. As individuals, we do them.
People have invented various ways of broadcasting on the internet, and a lot of them are generously just given away.
Yeah.
And we do that, and we also contribute to a certain amount of funds to people who are inventive and do these things. And
so we're
trying to hit a balance there.
Okay, so you want to read your summary.
And now you haven't heard it, so you have to listen.
That's right.
Before you react.
I am listening.
And wait till it's completely over. Okay, we're talking about a mathematical model that matches reality. It's kind of
something like the sun coming up.
Now you're reacting on it.
Go ahead.
Mathematical model that matches reality. Where is a mathematical model that matches reality needed? And the answer, in our economic system. The problem with our present economics is that we have no real data and analysis that represents human survival and life survival on Earth as the primary concern of economics. The primary concern of our present economic system is profit, power, accumulation. When economics does not deal with the real data that impacts the survival of the human species and life survival on Earth, when it concentrates only on maximizing profit, then you have economics based on subjective human perception, and you end up with fiat or valueless money. With the symptoms that are created by this kind of economics, which are some examples of this would be war, poverty, starvation, dislocation of populations, terrorism, racism, scapegoating, massive dumps of wasted natural resources, etc. Our present economics provides no ground under our feet, so we cannot be effective custodians of life on Earth. As George Sand once wrote, there is no there. There
is no there.
I've always liked that quote.
And zero. And I like the idea that without a starting point, a measure, or where we are, we can't ever get to where we want to go. In other words, if you were told to go somewhere and they say, put a point on a map, and you say, okay, I'm going to go there, but you don't know where you are, you would be drifting forever because you don't know which direction or where you are to get to where you want to be. And that's where we are in the economic system.
That's why it is important to once you accept that there are certain
physical
survival needs that people need, because we can kind of compute, that because we're people and we're able to see already.
We need water.
What our basic needs are: food, water, shelter, education, and these things we can make a mathematical model that represents this.
We
That's
actually-
why I'm
I'm
talking about that as a mathematical model that matches the reality of human survival.
Well, we actually asked a mathematician who was so stubborn. He was
you
a
don't
pilot.
you don't want a stubborn
I wanted
mathematician.
I
You
said,
want a
can you,
flexible
and
mathematician.
I said, can you do a, he said, oh, I can do anything with math. And I said, that's great. Can you do a, what do they call
An
that?
axiom.
An axiom on what we're talking about.
Right.
And I know that in the movie Numbers, they could probably figure that out.
Oh, yeah, right. They
But
would
I
be
know
able to
that
figure it out.
Max said he couldn't do that. But the reality is that you can, because we all live about 80 years of age. That's a real good number one. And number two, we all need a certain amount of water, otherwise we'll die, and a certain amount of food, and you can measure those in all energy units. And we need shelter. Those are the basic things. And we need the knowledge to know how to get them. Now, the knowledge is not really measurable, because that's still pretty much subjective. It's like any emotion and any abilities. And certain people can be great artists, or they can be great mathematicians, or they can have different minds. That's what makes human beings very, very unique. However, we do all of the same as far as our basic needs met: our shelter, our education, our food, and our water, and our lifespan. Those are always constant. And when I say constant, it could be
Within a range.
Within a range.
Within a range.
It's not, we're not going to die precisely at 80.
Because we are individuals.
Right.
But our wants are definitely always very
All
wildly
wants
different.
are subjective.
Yeah.
Our
And
needs
very
are
different.
not.
But what did you think of the what I said in this summary?
I said that's a good summary. And you got that summary probably from
I invented it out of my head.
you stole that, a lot of it, from the Numbers people.
No.
You didn't?
No.
I thought you got that out of
Only
a lot of
the
other
statement of mathematical model that
Right.
matches reality.
That's
but
what
the
I
rest
read.
of it is original.
Right, that's good. But you built on the other. That's what we all do. We build
Right.
on everybody
It gave me
else.
ideas.
Like I get a lot of people I talk with every day. That's why I'm so hoarse. And they come up with different ideas and they argue with me.
What did you think about the symptoms of our present economics that I listed? Did that sound?
Would you reread that? Because
I don't think you were paying attention.
I was paying attention.
I don't know.
But
Anyway, here they said war,
well,
poverty,
that's a symptom. Poverty is definitely a
starvation,
symptom. Starvation. Well,
dislocation.
actually, we don't die from lack of food. We die because of lack of distribution of food, because of the economic system.
Well, in the times before it was possible to distribute so well as we do,
Right.
people did die of lack of distribution.
They died of lack of food. They
of
didn't have
food.
it because
Right,
they
'cause
couldn't distribute
get it fast enough.
But
But now, you're suggesting that we can get it to any starving population.
anywhere, so they don't starve.
Right.
And that holds with shelter too.
Dislocation of populations, and we know that can happen from natural and man-made.
No, natural causes we
causes.
can try to circumvent with our minds and our actions. But man-made causes, I don't think should be. We should never be doing man-made negative causes. We should only do things in cooperation with other human.
Well, not intentionally. I mean, there's always going to be mistakes.
Yeah, well, we screw up.
Terrorism, I would suggest, is a symptom.
Right.
Racism. Would you agree with that?
Racism is a prejudice, yes. And there's people, by the way, who believe.
And why would this be a symptom of economics? I mean,
because people feel as though those people are going to take
causing the problem.
Those people are going to take my stuff because they're too stupid.
And they want what I have.
And they want what I have. So.
And they can't get it any other way.
And the only way they can do it is to take it. And they're not smart enough to figure out how to grow food.
But isn't this attitude promoted by the economic system? Because by dividing groups against each other, we never cooperate very well with each other.
Right.
And then, you can't get a consensus going about something that would be better.
Right.
Or a direction that would be better. And what about all of the what they call planned obsolescence?
Well, that's like this computer we're watching. Like I know that
a lot of
people,
years you're going to have to replace it.
Well, the people
throw it in the dump.
At least Windows 10, when you put that on, it's not really a thing you have to throw away. We can upgrade that throughout the old Windows, and it's an upgrade. That's a good. I think
but there are other things other than computers that are obviously
like cameras
discardable,
and the mouse is what we're using,
and upgrading our phones. And I mean, this is a very kind of elite population that deals with that kind of stuff. But even clothing, I mean, the fashions and things like that, you know, they keep changing so that people feel they have to.
You have to have the
dress a certain
new
way
sneakers
in order to.
And I know a friend of mine always talks about how he has to have a what's that kind of a car you need?
Now you're teasing.
A chick magnet car, a statement car to get the trophy chick. But the reality is that that's strictly advertising that people buy into. That's not what we really need.
There's a certain amount of brainwashing, and is that coming from the economic system
that's
too?
coming all from the economic system.
The propaganda, the brainwashing, right. In other words, the advertising.
The advertising, and no matter how smart we are, we really buy into that crap. And
this is getting in the way of us being really effective, as I said here, custodians of life on Earth, because we're so preoccupied with these things that are deteriorating natural resources and setting human populations against each other, that we don't look around and say, wow, what's disappearing around us? Where's the beauty that's disappearing? Animals,
I just want to show somebody something.
Do you follow what
I am, but I just want to show something. I just want to show people this. Right now, we have a phone call. I'm going to try to take this call.
Okay. Let me keep talking while you try to figure that out.
Hello.
People may not want to hear that. I've been reading forward in Critical Path by Buckminster
I'm on the air.
Fuller, and
I
wanted to. Are you going to talk over me?
You're not seeing me answer the phone now, but I'm going to put us on, and you'll see if we're still there. Here we go. I'm going to put us on. And there's about a 15-second delay. Now I'm talking to you.
If you put him on speaker, then maybe he will come across. Don't put it back up to your ear.
Okay, do you hear me all right now?
Hear you loud and clear. Your picture is fairly good. You're coming across nice.
Okay. Now see if you hear yourself
now
eventually.
Do you hear yourself
or
on
whether
there?
It echoes.
Did it echo on you?
If it echoes, we probably won't be able to.
Do I hear myself with an echo?
Yes. Yes.
Or not. You may not echo.
Well, the delay is kind of blowing my.
Don't turn it off.
Okay, I'm turning. I'll put you on speaker.
You can't do the experiment if you don't.
I'm going to see if this is working. But we're doing this with solar panels and the camera. Now I'm going to.
Well, you're asking me one question, and then I'm 15 seconds behind. I don't think I can handle this.
Okay, now.
Oh, okay. I hear
in 15 seconds, you're going to be seeing.
Then
you're going to be seeing.
Do I hear myself on there?
I don't know.
Do you now? I hear you loud and clear.
Yes, I can.
Did you echo? We're just curious.
Did you echo? Oh, I hear the echo. Okay. Now I took you off the speaker. So we won't be echoing. But this is how do you like the way this is being broadcast?
But nobody can hear what he's saying. You're deaf. This is not interesting to people watching the program.
If you actually turn your sound off on your computer, turn the sound off on your computer, you'll be able to talk normally. Okay. Now I can put you on speaker.
And then stick the phone here.
Okay. Now you should be able to hear me on the phone and it won't be echoing on your computer. How's that?
I think you just.
That's perfect.
Okay. And if you think you're too muffled, we'll put the phone somewhere else. But I was just saying I wanted to introduce a little different approach to what we're talking about today. We're talking about, Glenn, a mathematical model that matches reality in economics, which economics is not representing the reality of human survival or life survival on Earth is the premise. And so I just wanted to go Oh, I think he will.
Okay, go ahead. Go
And
ahead.
I read forward in Critical Path today, and I picked out a few things about some of the history. This is Buckminster Fuller's book that was his final book that he published just before he died at the age of about 83. It was published in the 80s too.
80s, right. He did tremendous work, Buckminster Fuller.
But he's talking about the first entrepreneurs, and he called them the great pirates, who had been able to figure out how to navigate the oceans and build the big ships that could bring back goods and come back alive with these ships full of merchandise that people would pay great prices for. And some of these voyages, would take years to accomplish, and it wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee that
They'll even make it.
that
Right.
they'll come back.
Don't forget, you only travel about 5 miles an hour on a boat with a good wind.
Yeah, and these were sailboats.
So these were sailboats, and they
Right.
didn't go that.
And some of them had oars too, maybe.
Yeah, but they only still did 5 miles an hour.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying they had two different possibilities to keep
they
moving.
had slaves.
Right, they had a whole lot of people rowing, and then the oars too. Then the sails too. But here's what Buckminster Fuller said about that. If the ship did come back, this is quote, if the ship did come back, both the enterpriser and the bankers realized a great gain. Thus, ship venturer paid the banker back, and the banker, who had been holding the cattle as collateral, returned them to their original proprietor. But during the voyage, usually 2 years to the Orient and back to Europe, the pledged cattle had calves, and then in quotes is the word kind, K-I-N-D, and this is German for child. And this is where the concept of interest originated, which was payable in kind or
In
kin,
kind, right.
which is
Payable
in young,
kind,
in
right,
the young
in
of
the young.
the cattle.
I didn't know that.
I didn't, and that's
Now
why I'm reading
that's
this.
That's amazing.
Which is
So
so
when
interesting.
you say paying in kind, in kind was the kids that were born.
The cattle.
The cattle was that was the interest.
That right, and that's where it's going here. The concept of interest originated, which was payable in kind, the cattle that were born, while the collateral was held by the banker, were to belong to the banker. So he got the children of the cattle.
For 2 years.
He got however long it took for that ship to come back. If
all
it ever did.
If
it never came back, he got everything,
right.
Of course. But if it came back, he got the interest, and that was the young that were born during that period.
And if he didn't come back, he got the principal and the interest.
That's right, because nobody came back.
But he gave them the money to run the fiat currency, the gold for the ships.
To build the ships,
right.
to make sure that everybody had a certain amount of wage.
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
So here's how it goes on from there, and this is still Buckminster Fuller's version of history, which I think I agree with entirely. Quote, when the Phoenicians shifted their trading strategy from cattle to metal money, the metal money didn't have little money. In other words, didn't have any babies.
Right.
Or kind, K-I-N-D, kind. But the idea of earned interest persisted. This meant that the interest was deducted from the original money value, and this depreciated the capital equity of the borrower. Thus, metallic equity banking became a different kind of game from the original concept. You see, it became actually...
I need to get my interest.
Right, because they were used to getting the
babies.
The baby cattle. They said, okay, we're still going to get the equivalent of that, but we're going to deduct that from the metal money and from the money, the metal that represents value. And now we've already gone into a situation where things are not based on reality.
Right. The first thing was because they kept the cattle.
Agreements.
They kept the cattle in case they didn't show up. That was the collateral.
The collateral, right.
And they fed the cows, and the cows had children, which were babies or calves, and then what happened with that deal was, well, since I fed them, I might as well keep, that was the interest
Right.
on a natural functioning.
But it doesn't transfer to metal money.
But they transferred it, right?
The bankers held on to the idea, but the concept itself changes altogether in terms of how much the borrower is affected or impacted. And it's not like they get back their adult cattle, like the full quantity that they put as collateral. They don't. They get less than their full collateral back. And this is where the fiat situation actually begins to take hold, because the bankers are in control of the situation. Right. They're the ones that lend, and they figure, well, we're going to insist that this continues.
This whole thing has been a really sneaky deal from the beginning of time. And this all started, in case anybody's interested, this all started with the beginning of civilization. It didn't before Roman Empire, when human beings always shared stuff. And then they shared knowledge, and they shared technology, and they shared ideas, and they didn't hoard them or try to bring cooperation with their neighbors, because if they found an herb that would keep them alive, and that's how we grew our society.
Right. Life was precious. People depended for their survival on each other and on real things like cattle. Cattle were extremely valuable. Sheep, goats, and pigs and chickens. These were things that were. May I have a little of that?
There's not too much there.
Well,
enough.
Maybe you can find it. That's ginger ale, in case anybody's.
I'll find us a new.
I'll find us a new. Thirsty
I'll find us a new, and I'm going to go.
But here's what Buckminster Fuller goes on to say: "Quote: The banker's interest was in reality depleting the life support equity of both the depositors and the borrowers." So the banks now have the borrowers and the depositors, kind of on their back heels, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's got them at a disadvantage right from the beginning, right from the moment they borrow. And
that's the banking system, my friends. Though that is the banking system.
Okay, so that's so interesting to me. But then I want to go on to say how this kept on being pounded, into the structure of this country. First, of course, of Europe. And then in every country in Europe, this was the premise, that the banks would be, the borrowers and the depositors, the people going out to risk their lives and to be the innovators and whatever of new technologies or whatever, were immediately put at a disadvantage. It's similar to the way that we're asking people today, youngsters coming out of high school, to put themselves into debt to get into a situation where they can be educated.
But the reality is, they're not giving them anything of value. Profession. They're giving them false fiat currency to make them work their lives so they can get an education to make more money because they have a degree.
Well, yeah, that's unfortunately the way that things have panned out right now. But now I'm going to just keep on reading what I drew out of Buckminster Fuller's Critical Path today. Just to give
before you do, we're about halfway through the program, and I want to tell you this is brought to you by Bridges Programming, sponsored by the Human Renewable Energy Measure, the THEHREM.org. Please don't hesitate to look that up. Don't hesitate to look that up, and we need you to understand this and do programming on it. You don't have to join anything or pay any money or give us your credit card or your firstborn. All we want you to do is just think about this, and there's something the matter. And if we had a measurement that says all humanity has their basic needs met for about an hour of their life work a day, then I think we would change an awful lot. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't work more, get more for work, or be an individual, get as much as you want. We're not talking about equalizing of stuff. We're saying just simply no human being should have to beg for their food or their shelter or their education for 1 hour of their contribution to society. After that, and we say 1 hour because that is a measurable item. You got 80 years of life. So we know all these things are measurable things. So therefore, I'm asking you, please get the message out there. Other websites such as Zeitgeist Moving Forward, Money as Debt. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So please, so we're going to go back. That's our commercial break, by the way. So we're going to leave it. And again, you can do programming on Bridget's program if you choose to do so. Don't hesitate to get a hold of our tech people, and they'll tell you how to get it on our programming. We do about 3,500 hits a week, so you'll be part of that, and you'll help grow our programming to help get this message out. That's our only goal.
Whatever humanitarian message you
may have. So you want to finish reading what you
I'm just
did a lot of
trying
work.
to give some background
Go ahead.
to how we got to this point. And of course, Mr. Fuller in his critical path, he does do that very nicely. And he talks about, how the East India Company in England was extremely powerful. And this is where the pirates essentially were trained to go out and to be the masters of the oceans, and
which is the universe,
and get the goods and bring them, get the goods from all around the world. And England was the first country to have an empire on which the sun never set. Finally, because they were everywhere, and the sun, wherever the sun was rising, somewhere in the empire of England at its height. And here's what Mr. Fuller's saying, quote, "In our tracing of the now completely invisible world power structures, it is important to note that while the British Empire as a world government lost the American Revolution, the power structure behind it did not lose the war. The most visible of the power structure identities was the East India Company, an entirely private enterprise whose flag was adopted by Queen Elizabeth in 1600, and it happened to have 13 red and white horizontal stripes with a blue rectangle in its upper left-hand corner." Does that sound familiar?
That sounds like us. 13 original colonies,
right?
With a
and
blue
later
rectangle.
It was modified for the the use of, but you have to figure who were the people who
came here,
initiated the revolution. They were the landowners who had massive land grants given to them by England, by the King George.
But George Washington was the first,
and he was
the biggest land grant.
Yes, but he was given great quantities of land when he came over here, and he just added to that. Right. He was the largest landowner in the United States. Well, it wasn't the United States then, but of the colonies at the time of his life.
I wanted to get, before you go back to Bucky,
and
while we still have
some
daylight here.
Okay.
I want you to visualize the back of this.
Oh, you can see the sun setting now.
And the sun is setting now on this water here. And the sun's setting, and this is a great view. Now, if you were going to build a home and you had this kind of view, this would be great. You would just love this. I mean, people would just give many years of their life to have this
East India
beautiful
Company
view.
Flag out there.
And there's the flag of the. It's amazing. I mean, this is all stuff that's been going on for years, and it's a very short amount of time, by the way. And we have it all evolved. So I just want to get this out.
So what were you meaning about the view?
The view is beautiful view. And I was talking to someone today that they lived in a 40,000 square foot home or something, but the true view is out their window or on the front porch looking at the land around them and the grounds and nature and stuff. So that's the real beautiful view. And that's
Not
That's
the house, you mean?
not the house so much. It's just
Being able to look out
it's
into the
nature's
woods and-
view. I'm just trying to bring that out. So I'll go back to
That's the real value.
That's
of
the
what
true
you're
value of
saying.
your mind and your
The beauty around you.
right. So that's the stuff we're looking at. Okay, I just wanted to hit that. Go ahead.
Well, there's just a little more where I'm going to read from my notes. Quote, the East India Company's owners, who constituted the invisible power structure behind the British government, not only did not lose, but moved right into the new USA economy, along with the latter's most powerful landowners.
Right.
So it was land, and the people with the most land had the most influence.
And that's because they could use land to create food.
Only the property owners, were the ones that
And if you had property, then
had a say
and
about
you had the and you
how
had
the
the
government was
and
going
you had
to
the rule of
evolve.
law that said to you, you will have that land, and no one else can trespass, and therefore you had the kings, and then they couldn't hunt on the land. You couldn't get food off the land, and those are some of the things that happen. It's amazing stuff, but it's all started before, just when civilization started, and that's well before the United States. And when Great Britain was there, and before that, they called it, first they didn't have a name for it. They had all these people, these pirates, and they were running the area at the time was where Great Britain is now, or the United Kingdom is now, which is called England now.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, why do we kill one another to take over lands when we can easily unite? And they're the first bunch of communists. That's that. We're going to just share our wealth together, and we won't kill one another. We'll live real well, and we'll control the economy. And to this day, it's not just the United Kingdom; it's all the kingdoms in the around the world.
Well, that's why Mr. Fuller calls it the invisible
group.
That's still, the premise is still there. It's the same. Operations in the background that we are not.
We would love to bring back Bucky. I wish we could.
But I'd like, yeah, right. But I'm going to read directly from the book if you want.
Go ahead.
About more of this perspective of what was happening at the very beginning of our independence from England. Quote, the supreme leaders of the American Revolution were the Southern type, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Both were great landowners with direct royal grants for their lands, in contradistinction to the relatively meager individual land holdings of the individual Northern Puritan colonists. And he makes a point earlier in the book about how the South, the landowners actually went to their land there because it was nice to live in the South. Anywhere in Virginia and South, it was, the climate was good, and people were willing to, and it was easier to make a living, to it just, the weather was congenial. So the farther north you went, it was more it was harder. The winters were very difficult, and so it was usually the religious communities who ended up there, and they felt it was worth the trouble to have the independence and the privacy and to have their own religions and not be disturbed and stuff. So they were willing to go through the hardships of living in the north. But that's what he's saying here. The individual Northern Puritan colonists, they didn't have, the huge thousands of acres granted to them by the King of England. And then he goes on to say, Buckminster Fuller says, with the revolution over, we have Alexander Hamilton arguing before the Congress that it was not the intention of the signers of the Declaration of Independence that the nation so formed should have any wealth. Wealth, Hamilton argued, as supported by Adam Smith, is the land, which is something that belonged entirely to private individuals, preponderantly the great landowners with king-granted deeds to hundreds and sometimes thousands of square miles.
Rule of man's rule, not nature's rule. Man's
but
law.
Still, but a privileged few is
right.
what he's saying.
Only a few people should control that.
And they were granted these lands by the King of England.
By
by
man's rule of law.
Yeah,
granted.
But it's still England
right.
controlling
exactly.
the whole game. It's still the Bank of England. It's still the East India Company. It's still the king you know,
Right.
having, you know, he chose people he was going to send over here and say, you've got thousands of acres over there. And so it goes on to say, they were preponderantly the landowners with king-granted deeds to hundreds, sometimes thousands of square miles, as contrasted to the ordinary colonists, hundreds of acres, homestead farms, or less. You know, that's a lot of land, a couple of hundred acres for a homestead. It was usually only, you know, 50 or 20 or 10. Or, yeah, well, that was supposed to go to
the slaves.
freed,
Yeah, free slaves.
Hamilton went on to the United States government so could, of course, need money time to time and borrow that money from the rich landowners' banks and must pay the banks back with interest.
Right.
So here we come back to the hobbling of the borrower and the person who is to take risk and try to build something, assuming that the people would be benefited by their representative government with the money they borrowed. The people gladly would be taxed in order to pay the money back to the landowners with interest. This is where a century and a half long game of wealth poker began, with the cards dealt only to landowners by the world power structure. What are you doing?
I have a piece of food.
Is that right? Well, what do you think about what I'm reading?
I'm thinking about it's still that way today. Exactly that way. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in a thousand and hundreds of years or thousands of years. It's the same as it was.
Obviously, and this is Mr. Fuller's words again, obviously, very powerful people had their land given to them by the king and not by God. But the king, with the church's approbation, asserted it was with the blessings of God. This deed processing produced a vast number of court decisions and legal precedent based on centuries and centuries of deed inheritances. Thus, the landlord's deeds differed from deeds originally dispensed from deeds of war. Then the great landlord loaned parcels of their lands to sharecropping farmers who had to pay the landlord a tithe, rent, or interest out of the wealth produced by nature
today
within the confines of the deeded land. And so, you know, I mean, there's such a huge advantage that it's a wealth poker began. The cards dealt only to the great landowners for the world power structure, and it's just picked up ever since.
It's never been catch up. It's been worse.
Or not.
Right. It's just we have an illusion that things are better. It isn't any better than it's ever been. It's the same thing that's been going on since when the first kings had fighting with each other to take over their lands, and then the king said, let's not fight and kill each other, because why are we doing that when we can, there's more than enough for us as kings to be the first communists of the world. So we'll share our wealth equally and make all the other people work for us, and we'll control them. And that's how you got the United Kingdom. And in case anybody's not interested in that concept, look it up. That's how it happened. The United Kingdom wasn't just a bunch of words. They united as kings to make sure they didn't kill one another, and they made sure they at least in most cases they worked together as kings. And then of course you had the United States come out a few thousand years later, and that's part of the United Kingdom, whether you want to realize it or not. And it's been on all over the world. And then we have the illusion of electing people. We just did a whole show last week on the Wizard of Oz. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Your media is screwing you to the wall. It's all interrelated. And once we get that figured out, that it's interrelated, we have at least an idea on what's wrong. And then we can figure out a way to maybe change that. And that's why you have the human renewable energy measure come about. By the way, if you're looking at the video now, or
we're turning a bit.
The wind is moving us very gently across this little body of water, and we are drifting, and it's almost like a pan
Yeah, it looks
panning.
like the camera's
It looks
moving,
like the camera,
but it's the whole boat is
but
moving.
the whole boat is
stern of the
moving just
boat.
very nice and slowly. So you get a kick out of that. And this is nature's air that's moving us, and the movement of the water, this very calm water. And it's just, and then you see the wind blowing the American flag, which we have dangling off the back, which looked like the same flag they had in England time that the Queen sort of adopted, with 13 stripes. But now we got 50 stars on them, and red, white, and blue stripes that represents blood and sky, I think it does. But anyway, it's just amazing to see how our belief systems keep us in power. I mean, under control, not in power, but under control, lack of power. And it's a shame. But anyway, continue on going. We only have a short time left on the programming.
Well, I'm just going to, I read ahead a little bit while you were talking. He talks about, Buckminster Fuller talks about the high seas trafficking, which was mastered by the world around line of supply controllers, the venturers and pirates known collectively as the British Empire. This world around traffic was in turn financed, accounted, and maximally profited in by the international bankers and their letters of credit, bills of exchange, and similar pieces of paper. International banking greatly reduced the necessity for businessmen to travel with their exported goods to collect at the importer's end, because the world around occurring metals, and that's the money, were at the heart of this advance in standards of living for increasing numbers of humans all around the world. The struggle for mastery of this trade by the invisible behind the scenes contending world power structures ultimately brought about the breakout of the visible international World War I. And he feels that there's a direct line to the First World War because of the behind the scenes struggling, for control of the lines of supply. And that in turn of course led to World War II.
Well, that because Germany was absolutely stuck in power, and then you can read about poverty rather.
Right.
And then and they were stuck in poverty, and then of course there was a void there, and the people in Germany wanted to have a better quality of life because they were now in poverty and they weren't stupid. And then they hired someone like Adolf Hitler, who stepped into the vacuum, and he knew how to raise money.
Yeah, but you have to consider too who funded Hitler.
Right. There was,
and it's very interesting to look into that. I haven't thoroughly looked into it yet.
But it's basically big business.
There were funders from every country, the United States included. France, United States, England, and they were mostly world
traders.
Yeah, behind the scenes, world power structures, world power companies. And they were dealing with coal, they were dealing with fuels, whatever a country would need, to keep its population alive. These are the kinds of things that they were dealing in, and in turn they financed, a dictator, which we see this over and over and over again. The dictator is the front man, is the CEO, essentially.
Yeah, right.
He's another CEO, that actually takes up residence in the country they're trying to manipulate. And it's a pattern that's just
continues.
It continues so often that it's amazing to me that it still works, but it does.
Understand that
we're doing it now.
I want to just bring this in, it seems like it's forever, but it's not forever. It's about 5,000 or 6,000 years since the beginning of civilization, maybe 7. Doesn't matter, but 7,000 years in the scheme of things is nothing.
In geological time, it's nothing. That's true.
But humanity's been around for millions of years.
But not at the
level
and
of
the quantity of people that we have now, right?
So we have something to consider, that we should be making a sea change we have to get back to cooperation rather than competition, like we did as we grew. We have to get back to a point where we allow individual rights, true individual rights, and not rights like not individual rights for the wealthy, but for all humanity. And that means we have to come together. So these are some of the little details that we're talking about. And I think if we do that, we may be able to set this up as, and I don't want me to be religious about this, but as the Pope is saying, and the Bible said for years, all men are created equal, and this could be a heaven on earth. I think that's available because we have great technology. And if we stop killing one another, we stop killing other animals for no apparent reason, then we need to get this, we can fix this. And that's my point. Anyway, that's where I'm going with this. But go ahead. I'm gonna continue on with this, and meanwhile I'm gonna set up our closing song. But go ahead. We got about 8 minutes to go. So.
Well, he's saying here, he's talking about how JP Morgan was a visible fiscal agent for the in power structure operating through Great Britain and her allies. And this is around 1914. He's saying, Buckminster Fuller, that industrial production in America was enormous, with an even more enormous amount of untapped U.S. metallic resources, particularly of iron and copper, as backup. Throughout the 19th century, all the contending invisible world power structures invested heavily in USA enterprise equities. Throughout the 19th century, the vast resources of the USA, plus the new array of imported European industrial tooling, the North American economy established productivity. The USA economy took all the industrial machinery that had been invented in England, Germany, France, and Europe in general, and reproduced it in America with obvious experience suggested improvements. This is interesting because this is sort of like what's happening now in China. They're taking all the inventions and reproducing them in China and then selling them back to the rest of the world. It's interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I hear that.
In 1914, World War I started in the Balkans and was joined in Belgium and France on the European continent. The British Isles represented the, quote, unsinkable flagship of the high seas navy of the masters of the world ocean's line of supply. The unsinkable flagship commanded the harbors and the European customers of the high seas line of supply control. If the line of supply that kept the war joined on the European continent broke down completely, then the outs would be able to take the British Isles themselves, which, as a flagship of the ins, would mean the latter's defeat. And that you have to read probably a couple of times to figure what he means there. I couldn't.
Well, the people who are being attacked would win, or the people who were the attackers would win, and that's what he's talking about. It's back to competition and wars to take over the shipping lanes, and we're still doing that. That's happening in the Black Sea right now with Russia and Croatia and Crimea.
Okay. Yeah, and here's where he brings in the idea what was going on economically and what JP Morgan was doing. In 1914, 3 years before the USA entered the war, JP Morgan, as the Allies' fiscal agent, began to buy in the USA to offset the line of supply losses accomplished by the enemy submarines. Morgan kept buying and buying, but finally, on the basis of sound world banking finance, which was predicted on the available gold reserve, came to the point at which Morgan had bought for the British and their allies an amount of goods from the USA equaling all the monetary bullion gold in the world available to the INS power structure. Despite this historically unprecedented magnitude of the Allied purchasing, it had only fractionally tapped the productivity of the USA. So Morgan buying on behalf of England and her allies exercised their borrowing credit to an extent that bought a total of goods worth twice the amount of gold and silver in the world available to the INS. As yet, the potential productivity of the USA was to be fractionally articulated. Because the ability to pay later credit of the Allied nations could not be stretched any further. The only way to keep the USA productively flowing and increasing was to get the USA itself into the war on the inside, so that it would buy its own productivity in support of its own war
That's
effort,
when they say wars make money.
as well as
Right.
that of its allies. Wow. I mean,
That's amazing.
That pretty much gives you an idea of the complexity of
How things work.
you know, and how far people, you know, with this kind of resources, these kind of resources look. You know, he's you know, first essentially suspending great deals of money to provide support for the allies, I guess you'd call them. And then when it's stretched beyond anything that will be possible for the allies to pay back, it forces the United States to go into the war itself.
That's right.
In order to,
and then we produce and we work and work
Yeah.
and work, and the more we work, that's real productivity, and that's real wealth, and then that real wealth converts right into the economic system, which is your labor and your mind, and keep on producing, keep on doing
by
this,
its own
by
productivity in
its own-
support of its own war
just
effort,
simply amazing.
as well as that of its allies.
Just simply amazing. I want to thank Bill
Amazing.
Staines for letting us use his work here. We don't use the whole thing. He gave us permission to.
Oh, here's how they persuaded America that they were fighting, quote, to save democracy.
Save democracy.
And
I've heard
that's the
that. I love my
propaganda.
freedom, right?
That's the propaganda that got the population rallied.
I love my freedom. We have people say that. That's a word. Look up Money is Debt. Please check us out again next Sunday on the Front Stoop. We'll be with you again. We don't know from where, but I want to thank Bill Staines. We're going to continue on here, and I'm going to start this programming up.
You're going to play a little going
And we're
out
gonna be
music,
playing a little Bill Staines.
and we can watch the.
I was born in the path of the winter wind, raised where the mountains are rolled. Their springtime
Bill Staines' River on his move, the first million miles. I want to thank you all for listening. This has been Bridges Program.
Whistling ways of my younger days too quickly have faded on by, but all of their memories linger on like the light in a fading sky. River, take me along in your sunshine, sing me your song, ever moving and winding and free. You roll it over, you change it over, let you and me, river, run down to the sea. Well, I've been to the city and I've been back again, and I've been moved by some things that I've learned. I met a lot of good people and I called them friends, felt the change when the seasons turned. I heard all the songs that the children sang, and I've listened to love's melody, felt my own music within me rise like the wind in the autumn trees. River, take me along in the sunshine, song ever moving and winding and free. You rolling over, you changing over, let you and me, river, run down to the sea. Someday when the flowers are blooming still, someday when the grass is still green, my rolling waters will round and flow into the open sea. Some here's to the rainbow that's followed me here, Here's to the friends that I know. Here's to the song that's within me now. I will sing it wherever I go. River,
Take me along in the sunshine, sings me your song. Thank you, Bill. Thank you all for listening. This has been Bridges Programming.